When I first moved to Chicago, I wasn't looking for anything fancy. I just needed a place where I could sleep, shower, and store my stuff without feeling like I was in a war zone. After weeks of scouring Craigslist, I found a one-bedroom unit in an older brick building on the north side. It was small, a little outdated, but the rent was cheap and utilities were included, a rare combination in the city. The building itself had character. Creaky staircases, faded carpeting, and a faint smell of old wood and dust that reminded me of my grandmother's house. My apartment was on the third floor, at the very end of a narrow hallway. It had a single large window that looked out over a narrow alley. Across the alley, maybe 20 feet away, was another building, almost identical to mine. Same brickwork, same window style, same fire escapes zigzagging up the back wall. My window faced one of theirs directly, like two eyes locked in an unblinking stare. The first night I stayed there, I noticed that the opposite window was always dark during the day, but when night came, a dim yellow light would flicker to life inside. I couldn't see much detail, just the faint outline of a small, sparsely furnished room. And a man. He was always there, sitting in a chair, facing directly toward my window. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. People sit by windows all the time. Maybe he had a desk there. Maybe he was working on something. But as the days passed, I realized something strange. He never moved much. He just sat there, facing me. I told myself it was none of my business. City living means you mind your own. But there was something about the way he sat so still, night after night, that made the hair on my arms stand up. I started closing my blinds after dark, but every so often, I'd peek out. And every time, he was there. Weeks went by like this. I never saw him leave, never saw anyone else in the room. Then, one rainy Thursday night, curiosity got the better of me. I decided to wave at him, just a quick, awkward lift of my hand, and that's when it happened. He waved back. Except, it wasn't a normal wave. His hand rose slowly, almost mechanically, the movement jerky and unnatural, like an old film reel skipping frames. Then it stopped mid-air, fingers slightly splayed, as if frozen in place. I slammed my blinds shut and told myself to forget it. But I couldn't. My mind kept returning to that slow, unnatural movement. The next day, I asked the building's maintenance guy about the unit across the alley. He paused for a moment, frowning. "That place?" he said. "It's been empty for years. Building's condemned. Why?" My stomach dropped. That night, I forced myself to look again. Same yellow light, same man, sitting in the same chair. Only this time, his face was pressed right up against the glass. I couldn't see his eyes. The glare of the light hid them, but I could feel them on me, watching. Over the next week, the pattern changed. He no longer sat still. Sometimes he would stand in the corner of the room, half in shadow. Other times he'd be crouched near the window, his head tilted as though studying me. Once, I swear I saw his mouth move, forming words I couldn't hear. Finally, I'd had enough. I decided I was going to prove to myself that there was nothing there. I waited until midnight, grabbed my coat, and walked across to the other building. The front door was chained shut, but the side alley had a rusted fire escape. I climbed it, my hands slick with rain. When I reached the third-floor landing, I could see the window up close. The yellow light glowed faintly inside. Heart pounding, I tried the window latch. It was unlocked. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The air was stale and cold. The floor was covered in a thick layer of dust. There was no furniture, no chair, no light fixture. The bulb above my head was shattered, yet the glow still seemed to fill the room somehow. And there was no man. I stood frozen, my breath coming in shallow bursts. That's when I turned toward the window I had just entered through, and saw, reflected in the glass, a figure standing directly behind me. I served in the Coast Guard for 12 years. During that time, I saw my share of strange things. Storms that seemed to come out of nowhere, ships that appeared on radar and then vanished, and more than a few close calls with death. But nothing haunts me quite like the night I spent alone in the Harrington Point Lighthouse. Harrington Point sits on a jagged stretch of coastline in Maine, where the rocks chew up ships like glass in a garbage disposal. The lighthouse has stood there since the late 1800s, guiding sailors away from the deadly cliffs. It's automated now, but the Coast Guard still sends someone out every few months to do a full systems check. In the fall of 2016, I drew the short straw. It was my turn. The place was remote. You had to drive an hour down an unlit road, then hike the last half-mile along the rocky coast. When I arrived just before sunset, the wind was already howling. The waves crashed against the rocks with a violence that made the whole ground shudder. Inside, the lighthouse was exactly what you'd expect. Narrow spiral staircase, peeling paint, the faint smell of salt and mildew. The keeper's quarters were on the second floor. Just a small kitchen, a bed, and a desk. I settled in, ate a quick dinner from a can, and started logging the equipment checks. By the time night fell, the place felt different. I can't explain it exactly. The air felt heavier, like the kind of pressure you get before a storm, even though the forecast was clear. Around 9:30 p.m., I was at the desk going over maintenance reports when I heard it. 3 slow, deliberate knocks at the main door downstairs. Now, remember, the only way out here is that narrow cliffside path. In daylight, it's dangerous. At night, in this weather, no one would risk it. I grabbed my flashlight and went down. When I opened the door, there was nothing but darkness and the sound of the wind. No footprints, no one in sight. I told myself it was probably the wind slamming something loose against the door. But 20 minutes later, it happened again. 3 knocks. Slow, measured. This time I checked the security monitors. The lighthouse had 4 exterior cameras, one facing each side of the tower. On the feed from the front door camera, I froze. There I was, standing outside. The figure on the screen looked exactly like me. Same uniform, same cap, even the same flashlight in hand. He stood facing the door, not moving, the beam of his flashlight aimed directly at the lens. I blinked, leaned closer to the monitor, and watched as the me on the screen turned and walked out of frame. Heart racing, I ran to the door and swung it open. Again, nothing. Just the wind, the waves, and the endless black. The rest of the night, the activity escalated. I heard footsteps on the spiral stairs when I was in the keeper's quarters. The light on the upper level, which I had switched off earlier, flickered on and off by itself. Once, I swore I felt someone breathing on the back of my neck as I climbed the stairs, but when I spun around, I was alone. By 2 a.m., I decided I wasn't going to make it until morning without some proof. I set my phone on the desk to record video and left it running while I made one last sweep of the building. When I came back, the phone was still there. The recording was still going. But when I played it back, my stomach turned to ice. The footage showed me leaving the room. And then, 30 seconds later, the me from the security feed walked in. He moved differently, too smooth, too deliberate, and he looked right at the camera before reaching out and turning it off. Except, my phone had never stopped recording. At dawn, I finished my checks, locked the place up, and left without looking back. I never volunteered for Harrington Point duty again. The lighthouse still stands there, its light sweeping the shore every night. And I sometimes wonder if the man on the camera is still there too, waiting for someone else to knock. We were all in our late 20s when it happened. A tight group of friends who'd known each other since high school. Me, Ryan, Claire, and Ben. We'd made a tradition of taking one camping trip every summer, just the 4 of us. No phones, no social media, no distractions. That year, we decided to head deep into the Adirondacks. We picked a remote spot by a small lake, miles from the nearest road. The first day was perfect. We set up our tents, built a fire, and spent the evening roasting marshmallows under a sky full of stars. Ryan, the most outdoorsy of us, volunteered to sleep in his own small tent a little further from the rest, claiming he liked the full nature experience. We laughed about it, told a few scary stories, and eventually turned in. Somewhere around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of shuffling outside. At first, I thought it was just Ryan going for a bathroom break. But when the noise went on longer than seemed normal, a slow, steady crunch of footsteps, I unzipped my tent and peeked out. The fire had died down to embers. The forest beyond was pitch black. I could see Ryan's tent about 20 feet away. The flap was closed, no light inside. The shuffling had stopped. I crawled back into my sleeping bag, telling myself it was probably just an animal. When morning came, Ryan's tent was empty. His sleeping bag was there, still zipped up, and when I touched it, it was warm, like he'd just been in it minutes earlier. His boots were lined up neatly beside it. There were no footprints leading away, not even disturbed leaves or grass. It was like he'd just vanished. We searched for hours, shouting his name until our voices were hoarse. Eventually, we had to hike back to where we'd left the car to call for help. Search and rescue teams combed the area for days. Dogs, helicopters, volunteers. Nothing. No sign of him. The police interviewed us over and over, asking the same questions. Were there arguments? Did Ryan seem depressed? Was he using drugs? The answer to all of it was no. Ryan was the most level-headed, cheerful guy you could meet. Weeks turned into months. The case went cold. Fast forward 5 years. I had moved to a different state by then, but I came back to visit family. One afternoon, I stopped by a small cafe in town. That's when I saw him. Ryan. He was sitting at a corner table, sipping coffee, wearing the exact same clothes he'd had on the night he disappeared. The same flannel shirt, same faded jeans, same scuffed hiking boots. His hair was the same length, his face unchanged. He hadn't aged a day. I froze, staring. He looked up at me and smiled. Not a surprised smile, more like recognition. I rushed over, my voice cracking as I said his name. He tilted his head slightly, still smiling, but there was something wrong about it, something in his eyes I didn't recognize. Before I could say another word, he stood, walked past me and out the door. I followed him outside, but the street was empty. Later, when I told Claire and Ben, they looked at me with pale faces.
"Funny you say that," Claire said. "I saw him too, last year, at the fountain downtown. Same clothes, same face. But when I blinked, he was gone." Ben nodded slowly. "Me too. 2 years ago. Same thing."
We never told the police. We never went back to the Adirondacks. But sometimes, late at night, I think about that warm sleeping bag, the neat boots, and the way Ryan's smile seemed borrowed.